intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Sunday, March 15th. Your reader for the first hour will be Edwin J. Vieira, and for the second hour, your reader will be Ron Bickelman. First, a look at the weather. Freezing drizzle this morning with a high of 53 during the day, but windy tonight and a low of 48, but temperatures rising in the middle 50s. Periods of rain to start off the work week on Monday with a thunderstorm as well, and plenty of wind and a high of 58 and a low of 18. Tuesday will see a mix of snow and wind with a high of 24 and a low of 19. Wednesday not nearly as cold, but still in those temperatures with a high of 35 and a low of 29. Cloudy and again not as cold on Thursday with a high of 45 and a low of 34. And Friday be overcast with some rain at night with a high of 46 and low of 37. Getting into the weekend, we'll see mostly cloudy conditions with a high of 44 and a low of 29 next Saturday. And now here's our first story. Iran threatens top port. Trump seeks other countries' aid. Iran openly threatened a neighboring country's non-U.S. assets for the first time Saturday, warning people to immediately evacuate the busiest port in the Middle East and two others in the United Arab Emirates as the U.S.-Israel war with Iran entered its third week. A missile struck a helipad inside the U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad, and debris from an intercepted Iranian drone hit an oil facility in the UAE, further increasing global anxieties about oil supplies. Iran threatened to attack cities in the UAE, home to Dubai and one of the world's busiest airports, saying the U.S. used ports, docks, and hideouts there to launch strikes on Iran's Karg Island without providing evidence. It urged people to evacuate areas where it said U.S. forces were sheltering, naming Dubai's Jebel Ali port, the Mideast's busiest, as well as Abu Dhabi's Khalifa port and Fujairah port. Iran has fired hundreds of missiles and drones at Arab Gulf neighbors during the war, but it said it was targeting U.S. assets, even as hits or attempts were reported on civilian ones, such as airports and oil fields. Associated Press images showed a fire in the Fujairah port that broke out after what authorities said was a drone interception, and smoke rising over the embassy compound in the Iraqi capital. On Friday, President Trump said the U.S., quote, obliterated military sites on Karg Island, home to the main terminal that handles Iran's oil exports. He warned Iran's oil infrastructure could be next if Tehran continues to interfere with the passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, where vessels are backed up and 1/5 of global oil supplies usually transit. Iran's parliamentary speaker has warned such strikes would provoke a new level of retaliation. Trump said Saturday on social media he hopes China, France, Japan, South Korea, and the United Kingdom, as well as others, will send warships to keep the strait open and safe. It was the first time Trump has publicly suggested the U.S. may not be able to reopen the waterway on its own and without international support. Iran continued to launch missiles and drone strikes on Israel and neighboring Gulf Arab states, and U.S. and Israeli warplanes pummeled military and other targets across Iran. Lebanon's humanitarian crisis deepened with nearly 800 people killed and 850,000 displaced as Israel launched waves of strikes against Iran-backed Hezbollah militants. Increased U.S. forces. A U.S. official said Friday that 2,500 more Marines with the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit and the amphibious assault ship U.S. Tripoli are being sent to the Middle East, adding to the military's large buildup of warships and aircraft in the region in decades. The official spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive military plans. Marine expeditionary units are able to conduct amphibious landings, but also specialize in bolstering security at embassies, evacuating civilians, and providing disaster relief. The deployment doesn't necessarily indicate a ground operation will take place. The Wall Street Journal first reported the Marine deployment. The Tripoli was spotted by commercial satellites sailing near Taiwan, putting it more than a week away from the waters off Iran. Earlier this past week, the Navy had 12 ships, including the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln, and 8 destroyers in the Arabian Sea. The total number of U.S. service members on the ground in the Middle East isn't clear, and a key island has been struck. The U.S. strikes on Karg Island targeted military sites, Trump said on social media. On Saturday, Iran's Joint Military Command reiterated its threat to attack U.S.-linked oil, economic, and energy infrastructures in the region if the Islamic Republic's oil infrastructure is hit. Iran's semi-official Fars news agency said that Karg Island strikes caused no damage to oil infrastructure. It said they targeted an air defense base, military and naval base, the airport control tower, and an offshore oil company's helicopter hangar. U.S. Central Command said it destroyed naval mine storage facilities, missile storage bunkers, and other military sites. Israel earlier announced another wave of strikes in Iran targeting infrastructure and said its Air Force had hit more than 200 targets in the last 24 hours, including missile launchers, defense systems, and weapons production sites. But what about Karg Island? The small coral island, about 21 miles off Iran's coast, is the primary terminal through which nearly all of Iran's oil exports pass. Iran has exported 13.7 million barrels of oil since the war started, and multiple tankers were seen on satellite imagery Wednesday loading at Karg, according to TankerTrackers.com, a maritime intelligence company. Iran gets a significant share of its revenue from oil, with shipments flowing to countries like China. The island has storage tanks in the south, along with housing for thousands of workers. Gazelles roam freely near the refineries and depots that make Karg one of Iran's most valuable and sensitive assets. Petros Katinas, an energy researcher at the Royal United Services Institute, said Karg Island was critical to funding Iran's government and military. If Iran were to lose control of Karg, it would be difficult for the country to function, even though the island isn't a military or nuclear target, he said. It doesn't matter which regime is in power, new or old, Katinas said. A takeover would give the U.S. leverage over negotiations with Iran because the island is the main node of its economy. J.P. Morgan's global commodity research team warned this week in an investment note that a strike on the island would have major economic implications. But another attack has been on the embassy. No one immediately claimed responsibility for the strike on the embassy's helipad. The embassy complex, one of the largest U.S. diplomatic facilities in the world, has been repeatedly targeted by rockets and drones fired by Iranian-aligned militias. There was no immediate comment from the embassy. On Friday, it renewed its level 4 security alert for Iraq, warning Iraq and Iran-aligned militia groups have previously carried out attacks against U.S. citizens' interests and infrastructure and may continue to target them. As state budget looms, boosting pensions could break the bank. Facing more than 15,000 public employees last week who were rallying for improvements to their pension plans, Governor Kathy Hochul let her thoughts drift back to her time as an Erie County clerk when she would defend the Department of Motor Vehicles workforce against dissatisfied customers. I have seen firsthand, and that's why I've always viewed myself as nothing more than a public servant, like all of you, Hochul told rally-goers inside MVP Arena in Albany. We're about to start to roll up my sleeves for the budget, but I'm going to keep fighting to make sure you get what you deserve. The issue before her is the Tier 6 pension plan, which covers about 780,000 state and local employees, including close to 61,000 workers in Western New York. But with less than 3 weeks to go before the state's April 1st deadline to pass a budget, Hochul, Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie, Democrat of the Bronx, and Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins, a Democrat of Yonkers, have shown no consensus as to what specific reforms they've agreed to pass. That uncertainty was underscored one day after the rally when a reporter asked Hochul if the state could afford pension reforms at a time when the governor has made affordability her top priority. Hochul said the question was hypothetical. She said she would not negotiate in public. We don't know what changes there would be, so how do we know whether you could afford them, right? Hochul responded. I'm open to the conversations about them. Hochul and every state lawmaker are up for re-election this year. Hochul faces Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman, a Republican, as her challenge for the governorship. Hochul has previously made adjustments to Tier 6 to shorten the average time to determine an employee's pension from their highest earned 5 consecutive years to highest earned 3 consecutive years. She approved lowering the time to vest for Tier 6 members from 10 years to 5. Unions spearheading the push to reform Tier 6, which include the New York State AFL-CIO, New York State United Teachers, or NYSET, Civil Service Employees Association, and Public Employees Federation, among others, contend Tier 6 needs more repair on multiple levels. They argue that, unlike earlier retirement systems, Tier 6 makes public employment in New York less desirable to potential employees. They contend in the past the lesser money offered in public service compared to private employment included lucrative retirements. All understand one simple thing: Tier 6 sucks. United Federation of Teachers President Michael Mulgrew told the crowd at the rally. Buffalo Mayor Sean Ryan said on his Facebook page he voted against the Tier 6 law when he served in the assembly because he believed it would make it tougher to attract and keep public workers. More than a decade later, we're seeing exactly those challenges across New York, Ryan said. Fixing Tier 6 is about fairness and about making sure cities like Buffalo can attract and keep the teachers, firefighters, sanitation workers, and public servants who keep our communities running. I support getting this done in the 2026-27 state budget. Ken Giardin, a fellow at the conservative Manhattan Institute and critic of the proposed reform, responded on X to Ryan's post. Why should New York State taxpayers bail out Buffalo while you're also asking New York State to increase Buffalo's pension costs? Do you know how much fixing Tier 6 would cost? He stated. Hochul proposed a $263 billion state budget. Heastie and Stewart-Cousins submitted budget plans this week that added billions of dollars to it, leading to criticism from Republicans who called the proposed spending reckless. Senate Majority Leader Rob Ortt, Republican of North Tonawanda, said labor unions raise many legitimate issues about reforming Tier 6. He said the reforms are complicated by the various goals prioritized by different unions as well as the impact on taxpayers. The cost does matter, Ortt said. I think union leaders get that. I think the rally is to say there's a lot of support for it, but I think they recognize that if it is a budget-busting thing, it's not going to happen, or certainly shouldn't happen. Statewide, Tier 6 includes an estimated 780,000 member employees. They're either in the New York State and Local Employees Retirement System, or ERS, the New York State Police and Fire System, PFRS, or the New York State Teachers Retirement System. New York's 8 most western counties include 39,488 Tier 6 employees in ERS, 2,319 employees in PFRS, and another 19,000 in the Teacher Retirement System, putting the region's total Tier 6 population at 60,807. Public employees deserve a pension system that is fair to everyone, said Senator Patrick Gallivan, Republican of Elma, a retired state police captain and former Erie County sheriff. Proposed changes to Tier 6 ensure a fair system that will help retain and recruit qualified candidates for those important positions. State and local employees are assigned into retirement plans which depend on their date of hire. Anyone hired before July 1st, 1973 was in Tier 1, the earliest and most generous of the pension system plans. The state enacted subsequent plans, Tier 2 in 1973, Tier 3 for 1976, Tier 4 in 1983, Tier 5 in 2010, and then Tier 6, which covers any employee since April 1st, 2012. Tier 4 employees of 30 years can retire at 55 or, regardless of their service, at 62. Tier 5 employees cannot retire before 62 without incurring penalties, but for Tier 6 employees, it extends to 63. Tier 4 employees' contributions to pensions are capped at 3% and end at 10 years. Tier 5 employees pay the 3% for their entire careers, while Tier 6 employees pay 3% and 6% for their entire careers, depending on how much they earn, which means they pay more as they gain seniority. Tier 6 has created a recruitment and retention crisis that's driving up costs for state and local governments, most visibly through unprecedented mandatory overtime, but also through constant hiring, training, and backfilling of vacant positions. Mario Cilento, president of the New York State AFL-CIO, said in a statement, adding he's working with Hochul and the legislature to develop solutions addressing these mounting fiscal pressures by fixing Tier 6. The Senate's budget resolution said the House, quote, supports continuing to reform Tier 6 to provide improved benefits for those members and address recruitment and retention challenges in public service. The Assembly budget resolution said the House is considering proposals to reset the contribution rate at 3%, increase overtime limits on the calculations of final average salaries, and allow employees to retire at 55 if they have 30 years of service. When asked if he was concerned reforming Tier 6 would add new personnel costs on cities that are struggling, Heastie said, "You can walk and chew gum at the same time. We want to make sure cities are in good financial positions, but we also have to make sure we have an enthusiastic, supportive workforce. When asking people to work well into their 60s, 40 years on the job, that's just a lot to ask of people." You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time for our morning listeners is 9:14 a.m., and for our afternoon listeners, the time is 4:14 p.m. And now on to a front page feature. Spirits are high. Downtown businesses expect a big bounce from March Madness. March in downtown Buffalo is already madness. Just in the past week, the temperature swung from 66 to 27 degrees. Lightning, sunshine, snow, rain. The Sabres won 8 games in a row. This weekend brings St. Patrick's Day parades, plural, to the Old First Ward on Saturday and to Delaware Avenue on Sunday. This week, March in Buffalo is all about getting madder. Everyone's favorite underdog is hosting March Madness. For the first time, Buffalo will host the annual college basketball tournament at KeyBank Center. There will be 4 games, Thursday and 2 on Saturday. Downtown is preparing for the tournament's thousands of tourists. The consensus is that it's fantastic, said Jay Mano, owner of Chippewa Soho and Frankie Primo's Plus 39. It's a huge shot in the arm. The reality of what I see on a daily basis operating downtown is that if there were just more things happening, everyone that's down there would be made in the shade. We wouldn't see all of these restaurant closings, said Michael Dimmer, owner of downtown restaurant Marble and Rye. It's just a matter of bodies being down there and the business is going to come in. Exactly how many thousands of tourists travel to and stay most of the week in Buffalo depends on which teams are selected in tonight's televised Selection Sunday. This is how the behind-the-scenes madness begins. Downtown restaurateurs each have their own dream picks. In an ideal world, Pearl Street Grill wants a nearby team like Syracuse. That would bring a lot of fans to Buffalo, where general manager Mike Sircone hopes that they would eat at one of the arena's closest and most visible restaurants. Mano, further uptown on Chippewa Street, wouldn't want a team like Syracuse. Their fans are too close. They wouldn't stay overnight. He would love it if the Dukes, Carolinas, Kansas, those kinds of teams came to downtown. Mano expects a decent game day crowd, but mostly benefits from the downtown hotel traffic. He fantasizes about faraway teams with huge national fan bases, spending multiple nights in Buffalo, craving spaghetti pomodoro. Visit Buffalo, Erie County's tourism board, prepped businesses about the thornier side of hosting March Madness. The highest hurdle will be feeding the rush of fans seeking wings quickly between games, and everyone wants those fans. Canal Side will lure them with food trucks and Resurgence Brewing Company's beer stand. Some downtown restaurateurs aren't thrilled about the food trucks, but understand the need for food near the arena is great. Nobody loves it, Mano said. That's obviously potentially less people that's going to come to us. But ultimately, we want, as a city, to put our best foot forward. Chippewa's bars and restaurants served a shuttle to carry fans back and forth. If you put in the work, you'll get the business, Mano said. Everybody's going to do some business because there's no way around it. Pearl Street Grill, within walking distance of KeyBank Center, has an offer a few fans can refuse. It makes manager Sircone smile. All 4 floors of the restaurant, huge former warehouse floors with bird's eye views of the city's waterfront, will be open, and hopefully, Sircone said, the restaurant will be so full that it will spill into the adjoining building for overflow. His bait? A $25 all-you-can-eat buffet, including wings and beef on weck. This is going to be my 3rd time doing it, Sircone said. It's always just a lot of fun. Everyone's great and the spirits are high. But how the city prepares? Buffalo hosted its first NCAA tournament games in 2000. Newspaper reports recall an overflowing city where business was booming. Buffalo's friendly faces, more than the huge capital investment and revitalization benefiting other cities, made the city glitter, wrote a news reporter at the time. This is like the crowd we had for the Garth Brooks concert, Pearl Street Grill's former manager told the news in 2000. Mano recalls the first tournament less rosily. He bartended at a Chippewa bar, the Crocodile, then. The whole nation was in uproar because people couldn't get food fast enough to get back to the arena for their games, Mano said. Now it's a lot easier. Downtown restaurants are ordering at least twice, sometimes 3 times as many wings as normal for the week. Pearl Street Grill expects to use about 60 to 70 cases this week, compared to a normal 20 cases of wings. Boots on the ground advertising is absolutely essential. The Chippewa Alliance is sending people to the arena to hand out flyers and tell people about Chippewa's bars, restaurants, and the shuttle. 50 Visit Buffalo volunteers wearing Ask Me signs will direct fans to various restaurants. Non-sports bars downtown, they plan to benefit too. Conbiri Buffalo, a new ramen spot on Washington Street, expects to feed the tournament's tourists. Hotel traffic makes up a large part of their business, which is near the Hyatt Regency. I love hearing what the conventions are all about, said co-owner Chiara Maslow. I also think that's part of the why businesses open downtown is important, Maslow said. When people are here from out of town, it's not great that they walk outside and they're like, oh, but there's nothing here. I don't want that to be their impression of Buffalo because it's not accurate. Not everyone is sold on March Madness. Mark Supples, owner of Downtown Food Hall International House, doesn't expect the college basketball tournament's shine to glow upon his business. It really hurts business because people that don't care about basketball or just want to avoid the crowds, they stay away, Supples said. The basketball people don't come to places like this. They don't want to, more or less. They go to a bar that has a lot of TVs, and I don't blame them. They're here for basketball. They're not here for our dining. But some restaurateurs like Menno and Dimmer think that if more things like March Madness or anything from the Super Bowl to the NFL Draft to a reprise of Thursday at the Square brought people downtown, the downtown restaurant scene would improve. There's really nowhere to go but up, Menno said. We need the events. And now on to world news. Greenland refocuses on tourism as talk of the takeover wanes. Not long before Greenland became a geopolitical talking point, it was a hot topic for avid travelers, particularly Americans. Last June, United Airlines introduced the first direct flights from the U.S., bringing more than 300 passengers weekly to the capital of Nuuk. Throughout the busy summer season, those flights deposited some 4,500 Americans into a city whose population is around 20,000. That, plus new flights from Copenhagen, helped the Danish territory achieve an unprecedented year for tourism, notching twice as many international arrivals as it did in 2024. Interest in Greenland, for tourists and because of President Trump, for world leaders, has never been higher. After the first months of 2026 saw Trump threaten to take over possession of the territory, the geopolitical standoff ended with an agreement to pursue a, quote, framework for a future deal. But as the geopolitical front has quieted, Greenland has returned focus to the tourism boom that started last summer. April will see the opening of the new regional airport in Qeqertau, the largest settlement in the south. That will be followed in October by a new transatlantic airport in Ilulissat. The territory's first big summer season came with ups and downs that can inform both Greenlanders and travelers about what lies ahead. Greenland may share a profusion of fjord-filled landscapes and vivid nightly displays of the aurora borealis with popular neighboring Iceland, but the two destinations are drastically different. Whereas the latter has its ring road for easy drives and resorts with thermal baths, 80% of Greenland is effectively a large sheet of ice. Greenland's extreme isolation and infrastructural challenges make for an expensive place to visit. Nearly everything must be shipped in. It's easy to pay 57 Danish krone, or $9 American, for a simple latte, whereas in also pricey Iceland, it can cost closer to 738 Icelandic krona, or $6. Harder to swallow still, an overnight at Hotel Hans Egede, generally considered Nuuk's best stay, though firmly in the 3-star category by international standards, typically exceeds $350 per night during high season. And that's just where you stay in the main city before you head farther out, as most people do, to the much more rugged and remote surrounds of the fjord-lined coast or the Arctic Circle, where it's easy to pay $1,400 per person per night for a glammed-up tented camp. Before last season had even ended, the intrepid adventurism that brought the nation's first big wave of tourism was supplemented with grousing and gripes. It didn't help that in August, Nuuk International Airport suddenly shut down after security screening protocols were deemed insufficient by Danish transit standards. The bad weather, a force to be reckoned with in Greenland no matter the time of year, caused dozens of other cancellations. Hundreds of travelers were marooned in Nuuk without a place to stay. Several times during the high season, which runs from June to early September, Air Greenland created makeshift hostels inside airports to compensate for a lack of proper accommodations. Early adopters are generally the most intrepid among us. Their curiosity and exploratory nature lead them to embrace new, often untested technologies. But when it comes to travel, a similar tolerance for ambiguity and risk can be much lower. In the case of Greenland, these not-so-minor hiccups proved a bridge too far for many. Being an early adopter in travel means you have to accept that there can be some rough edges, said Tom Marchant, a co-founder of Black Tomato, a U.S.-based travel company that specializes in off-the-beaten-path itineraries. In his experience, those kinks are, quote, all part of exploring a place way before the masses. Despite the record tourism numbers, Greenland is a hard place to build additional hotels. Plans to add more than 500 beds in Nuuk aren't expected to bear fruit until 2030. With most of the local workforce gainfully employed in government or commercial fishing, it's also hard to find tourism jobs. They're largely outsourced to seasonal international workers. Brazil's telenovelas help fuel fame on the U.S. silver screens. Hollywood actors might rule the silver screen, as today's Academy Awards are poised to prove, but Brazil's path to stardom often starts under the bright lights of a TV studio, rather than a sprawling movie set. Since at least the 1960s, the telenovelas, Latin American TV series often compared to soap operas, though a little more dramatic, produced by Brazil's leading broadcaster TV Globo, have evolved from simple daily dramas into a multi-million-dollar industry, with 13 studios, 3 set towns, 122 edit bays, and reaching up to 60 million of Brazil's 213 million people every week. Many Brazilian actors associated with Oscar-contending films, such as Central Station in 1998, I'm Still Here in 2024, and this year's 4-category nominee, The Secret Agent, first became household names via TV Globo. Actors like Wagner Moura or Fernanda Torres gained broad national visibility through telenovelas. In contrast, Brazil only has 3,500 movie theaters, mostly located in major cities and where U.S. blockbusters feature prominently. This creates an ecosystem where success on TV may lead to big cinema roles, which then circle back to telenovelas and then on to the movies again. The circle of life for film continues. And it's a continuous platform. Moura, the lead actor in The Secret Agent, starred in the telenovela A Lua Me Disse, The Moon Told Me, 21 years ago. Similarly, Fernanda Torres, the star of I'm Still Here, which won Brazil's first Best International Feature Oscar, was already a beloved actor due to 2 major TV Globo comedic series that many in the public see as telenovelas. Globo's telenovelas are key for Brazil's audiovisual production, said Amaury Soares, director of TV Globo and Globo Studios, hailing them as a continuous platform of creation and production of content. The Secret Agent has actors and staffers who worked at Globo who will work at Globo again, and the film itself has Globo investment despite being independent, Soares said. TV Globo broadcast 3 telenovelas simultaneously from early evening to prime time. They're produced at studios in Rio de Janeiro, often run for 6 months from Mondays to Saturdays, and involve more than 1,000 people. A finale can turn into a national event with bars, restaurants, and gyms airing those episodes. The industry requires adaptability. With some episodes written only days in advance based on audience ratings, telenovelas allow viewers to indirectly co-create the narrative. And their economic impact is powerful. A remake of the hit Vale Tudo, Anything Goes, reportedly generated over 200 million reais, $38 million in advertising, 4-fold the global box office numbers for The Secret Agent. Annual scouting. Each year, TV Globo recruits up to 70 new actors from theater, film, and regional productions. Soares says they hone their skills with high-end equipment and new techniques for a year, then many leave for other productions. Some just stay for the broadcaster for more short series. Dira Paes, a veteran actor and one of TV Globo's frequent pundits during Oscar nights, notes Brazil's telenovelas and cinema industries are increasingly intertwined as professionals can move from one to the other to create and make more money. She was recently in another popular series, Pantanal, or Wetlands, and in Manas, a film praised by Julia Roberts and Sean Penn. Telenovelas are not only about ratings, but also heart and affection. When you do it on prime time, you experience the power of an entire nation watching you. When the public loves your character, it's a very special popularity, said Paes, the star of Tres Graças, or Three Gracas, a show filmed in Rio but set in an impoverished area of Sao Paulo. Mauricia Steiser, an author and critic of TV culture, says Brazil's inequality boosted free TV channels like Globo in a way that reduced the general public's interest in cinema. Ultimately, he argues, that led to Brazilian cinema holding a grudge for not having the same reach as telenovelas. But it's also considered a safe haven. Steiser added that many actors have a Hamiletian dilemma whenever recruited for a telenovela: to be popular and have a sure income every month, or to take risks in a career that involves theater and cinema. TV was always a safe haven for most actors, he said. While rival Brazilian TV networks have tried to challenge Globo's supremacy in the genre, few have actually achieved this success. but even TV Global productions are no longer as dominant as they were up until the early 2010s. And company executives have acknowledged they face growing competition from streaming videos. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time for our morning listeners is 9:30 a.m., and for our afternoon listeners, the time is 4:30 p.m. And now on to national news. Republican election bill may be a burden for voters. Joshua Bogdan was born and raised in the United States. The only time the New Hampshire resident has left the country was a day and a half in 7th grade when he went to Canada to see Niagara Falls. Even so, that didn't mean proving his U.S. citizenship in last fall's local election was easy. The 31-year-old arrived at his local voting place in Portsmouth and handed the poll worker his driver's license, just as he'd done in other towns when providing to vote. And she said that would no longer do. The poll worker said that under the state's new proof of citizenship law, which took effect from the first time during town elections in 2025, Bogdan would need a passport or birth certificate to register again at his new address. I didn't know that anything had officially changed, and walking in there, he said, and then being told that I had to provide a passport that I've never had or birth certificate tucked away somewhere safe just to cast my vote, which I've done before, well, it was frustrating. But the national push begins. Bogdan's experience in New Hampshire is a glimpse into a future for potentially millions of voters nationwide. That is, if Republican voting legislation, being pushed aggressively by President Donald Trump, passes Congress and a Show Your Papers law is put into place for the first time in the midterms. The Safeguard American Voter Eligibility, or Save America Act, cleared the House last month on a mostly party-line basis. Republicans say it would improve election integrity, and Trump has called it safeguards for common sense. The bill is scheduled to come up in the Senate for a vote this week and a debate. Republican messaging has mostly highlighted a less divisive provision in the bill that would require voters to show a photo ID, but the mandate for people to provide documentary proof of citizenship to register to vote in federal elections is likely to have the most wide-ranging consequences. Non-citizens already are prohibited from voting in federal elections, and it is not allowed by any state. Cases where it occurs are rare, though misinformation usually says this occurs more often. Obtaining the necessary documents under the SAVE Act is not as easy as it might sound. A similar effort was tried in Kansas a decade ago and turned into a debacle that eventually was blocked by the courts after more than 30,000 eligible citizens were prevented from registering to vote. Documents with caveats. Rebecca Carruthers, president and CEO of the Fair Elections Center, said the legislation's strict documentation requirements could move the U.S. in the opposite direction of a representative democracy. If the bill passes, it would deny millions of eligible Americans their fundamental freedom to vote, she said in an email. The list of qualifying documents in the SAVE Act for proving citizenship appears long, but many of them come with qualifiers. Under the bill, a Real ID compliant driver's license would have to indicate that the applicant is not only a citizen, but not all do. Only New York, Michigan, Minnesota, Vermont, and Washington offer the type of enhanced Real IDs that explicitly indicate U.S. citizenship. Standard driver's licenses, generally available to both citizens and non-citizens, often do not include a citizenship indicator. The stipulations continue buried in the fine print. While military ID cards are listed as qualifying documents under the Act, they will not suffice on their own. The bill says a military ID must be accompanied by a military record of service indicating the person's birthplace was in the U.S. A DD-214, the current standard issue certificate of release or discharge for all military service branches, does not currently fulfill that requirement. According to the Pentagon, that document only lists where someone lived at points of entry and discharge and a person's current home of record. But passports are costly. For most provisions, the SAVE Act contains no phase-in period. That would give voters in local election offices time to adjust. If passed by Congress and signed by Trump, its documentary proof of citizenship mandate would apply immediately. That could lead to a rush to obtain documents, or by those who want to register or need to register again. A 2025 University of Maryland study estimates 21.3 million Americans who are eligible to vote do not have or don't have easy access to documents proving their citizenship, including nearly 10% of Democrats, 7% of Republicans, and 14% unaffiliated with either major party. A passport would most effectively meet the requirement, but only half of American adults have one, according to the State Department, and the SAVE Act requires the passport to be current. Obtaining a passport in time for a looming voter registration deadline is another potential hurdle. Workers who process passports had layoffs at the State Department reversed, but just last month, the department forbid passport processing at certain public libraries that had long helped relieve pressure at the department. Government libraries, post offices, county clerks, and others still provide the service. It takes 4 to 6 weeks to get a passport, according to the department's website, excluding mailing time. A new passport costs $165 for adults, while renewals cost $130, and the photos cost $10 or $20 more. The turnaround time can be sped up to 2 weeks or 3 weeks for an additional $60, and for even faster processing, add $22 more. A fully expedited process for a new passport would cost at least $257. Birth and marriage certificates, too. A birth certificate might be a quicker and cheaper choice for most, but there are twists. The SAVE Act requires a certified birth certificate, issued by a state, local government, or tribal government. What does not appear to qualify is the certificate signed by the doctor that many new parents are given in the hospital when their child is born. It provides information similar to a certified birth certificate, but wouldn't meet the letter of the federal legislation. Like passports, birth certificates can sometimes take weeks to obtain. Those who live near their birthplaces can visit the local vital statistics office, but staffing shortages and escalating demand for real IDs have caused significant backlogs in some states. In New York, the waiting period for certified copies is 4 months, the state said. Average processing times for online certificate requests vary widely by state, from as few as 3 days to 12 weeks or more. People whose birth certificates don't match their current IDs, mostly women who changed their names when they got married, would likely need additional documentation to register to vote under the new bill. A 2023 Pew Research Center survey found 80% of women in opposite-sex marriages in the U.S. take their husband's last name. Extreme weather will touch every section of the country. Nearly every part of the U.S. is getting walloped by wild weather, or just about to be. Days of downpours have begun in Hawaii. The Southwest will soon bake with day after day record temperatures of 100-degree plus heat. 2 storms will dump snow by the foot over northern Great Lakes states, and the dreaded polar vortex will again invade the Midwest and East with soul-crushing Arctic chill. The forecast of extremes come as weather whiplash has already hit much of the East. On Wednesday, Washington, D.C. residents walked around in shorts in record-breaking 86 degrees, and on Thursday, it snowed. All the country, even if you're not necessarily seeing extremes, are going to see generally changing from cold to warm or warm to cold, said meteorologist Mark Chenard, the National Weather Service's Weather Prediction Center in Maryland. Former National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Chief Scientist Ryan Maue said he expects weather in all 50 states to be extreme. And triple-digit heat. Let's start there. A heat dome will form early this week and park over the southwest, baking temperatures to triple digits that haven't been seen this early in the year, Maue and Chenard said. Some forecasts see 98 degrees in Phoenix on Tuesday, followed by 103, 105, and 2 days of 107. In 37 years of record-keeping, Phoenix never hit 100 before March 26th, and usually its first 100-degree day is in early May, according to the Weather Service, which warned, since we're not acclimated to this level of heat this early in the year, it'll be more impactful than usual. It's already started in Los Angeles with unusual 90-degree weather in March that had people in shorts and tank tops seeking shade whenever they could find it. Shane Dixon, age 40, usually runs about 5 miles near his Culver City home without much effort, he said, his face glistening with sweat and his t-shirt tucked into his shorts. But Thursday was hard because of the heat, and he had to cut it short. The back of my neck was melting, he said, but he preferred it to the cold and snow that'll hit elsewhere. I could go literally soak myself and walk out in the sun. I'll make it home fine. If it was freezing cold, I couldn't do this, he said. And there's the bitter cold. Around the same time as the extreme heat starts blasting Phoenix, The polar vortex, a system that usually keeps frigid air penned up near the North Pole, is forecast to send its chill deep into the Midwest and the eastern states, even bordering some of the Southeast, Maue said. Minneapolis will hover around 0 for a low, and Chicago will be in the single digits Tuesday. The next day, temperatures in the teens and 20s in the Northeast and 20s in the Mid-Atlantic, Maue said. Even Atlanta could drop to the 20s. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier radio reading service. The time for our morning listeners is 9:40 a.m., and for afternoon listeners, the time is 4:40 p.m. As Leather Shop closes, so does a portal to the past. Step inside M. Stephan Sons, and it feels like you're stepping back in time. Antique tools humming with history, rivets and buckles stacked to the ceiling, and a family legacy woven into every stitch. Soon all of it will be gone when Linda Stephan, the great-great-great-great-granddaughter of the shop's founder, retires and closes the Main Street mainstay at the end of this month. When she does, it will be a sign of how much have changed for a family of leather workers who opened a shop at a time when the skill to make and fix essential everyday products, from boots to saddles, was in high demand. Now it's a niche skill in a throwaway society that values prices and convenience over craftsmanship and durability. People ask, "Where am I going to go?" she says. "How do I know I'm the last of what I do?" M. Stephan Sons began in 1851 when German immigrant Michel Stephan came to downtown Buffalo and opened a leather retail and repair shop 1 block away from its current location at 761 Main Street. When the store closes, it will be a loss to leather workers who say Linda Stephan's generational skills are irreplaceable and that it's not a comparable leather shop for hundreds of miles. It is also a loss for Buffalo history, which is being dismantled as the time capsule of a store is boxed up. With her retirement approaching, Stephan keeps plugging away at a constant to-do list of mostly antiquated tasks for customers who keep bringing in more work, even as her friends and helpers swirl through packing up the store around her. On a recent day, she affixed leather tassels to a pair of bright orange shoelaces for a pair of combat boots a customer brought would soon be wearing at a fashion show at nearby Shays. That was in between some reconstruction work on a leather jacket once owned by Gordon Lightfoot. And she was almost done buffing out those marks on a leather case holding a vintage backgammon set. She ran her hands over a smooth expanse of thick black leather draped over a table. "I have to cut a belt out for someone," she says. Stephan, who run the shop since the 1990s. Nearby are boxes and bins full of metal grommets, rivets, and buckles that tower toward the ceiling. Bolts of leather are rolled up on shelves. Antique display cases show every manner of leather paint, polish, and conditioner. Stephan picks her way past an impressive gilded safe, emblazoned with the store's name and containing a store ledger that dates back to 1887. Nearby is a giant trophy she won for amateur horseback riding. She brought it in the old leather saddle she no longer uses, hoping someone might get caught up in her Everything Must Go sale and take that as well. But the trophy and 2 leather masks a friend made in honor of her horses aren't going home with her. "Oh, those were my boys. They were champions," she said, sounding far away. Her shop is like a living museum, with supplies and machinery that are now considered obsolete. Recently, filmmakers making a period movie set in the 1800s came by and bought some old machines at a bargain price. "I gave it to them for nothing because no one uses them anymore," she says. One of her helpers advances down the staircase, singing a Broadway tune with his full chest in a tone that is clear as a bell. Amused but hardly distracted, Stephan shakes her head and keeps trying to figure out how to restore the backgammon set's weathered handle. One woman came in to pay for a job being done on a pair of heels that isn't finished yet. "Hold on to that $20 bill. Do you mind, sweet pea?" Stephan asks. A few minutes later, 2 strangers find their way in, asking if they can take pictures of the old-timey shop before it closes. "Surely, just don't get any on me," Stephan says. By the time they leave, all 3 are laughing like old friends and have exchanged phone numbers. Matthew Miller, now of Washington State, first walked into M. Stephan Sons a decade ago and saw his passion for leatherwork ignited. "It felt like I was in the 1800s or something, like it was still horse and buggy outside," he said. "Her leather store gave me the leather bug and gave me jumping off points for starting out." He began hanging around the shop years ago, soaking up what lessons from Stephan, who cheerfully shared her expertise. Today he uses the vintage tools he bought from her shop in his own work as an artisan maker of wallets, belts, and bags. She even gave me a ride home a few times, Miller said. Lance Kasmark, also a leather worker, knows Stefan from their time in a group of medieval reenactors called the Society for Creative Anachronism. He said Stefan has a sterling reputation in their barony, as well as among area businesses, the theater community, and customers. She's always been there to teach people and give her time that way, Kasmark said. If you didn't have knowledge on a particular tool or technique, she would always teach you and offer advice on how to advance your skill. That sharing of skills passed down through the generations was priceless, he said, and especially hard to come by before the internet. She put in the extra mile, even though it didn't benefit her as much as it could have, Kasmark said. Giving discounts on things, cutting up leather hides that normally she might sell whole, but people couldn't afford, and her shop's always been a destination. It's like a portal into the past. She preserved the shop so well. It was old and had a few crooked corners and everything, but it's not like modern leather shops that you might go in, he said. Of course, those are slowly disappearing as well. Stefan laments the Amazonification of retail. So many people are closing, she says, and those people turning to Amazon for shoes and other goods are finding the cheap quality of what they buy not suited for repair. When I repair something, some don't, some do, I give them a price, and they say, I only paid this amount of money for it. Can't you do it cheaper? She said. No, my time is worth something. I have to pay the lights, the taxes. I can't do it for nothing. And now her back hurts. It's time to go. On March 21st, whatever hasn't sold in the store will be sold at auction. Some products are set aside for one of the few shoe shiners left in the area. One of the most well-known, who worked at a barbershop in the airport, has passed, and another is facing health issues. The shoe repair shops that used to proliferate the market are mostly gone, but the ones that still exist will have to find a new supplier of polishes, creams, and leathers after Stefan closes. Come April, M. Stefan Sons will be just another memory. A construction firm will take its place on Main Street, and another era in Buffalo. It's just time, Stefan says. Now on to personal finance. Dynamic pricing. A look at algorithm-driven cost fluctuations and what shoppers can do about them. The only constant in life is change, the Greek philosopher Heraclitus famously said. When it comes to prices for goods and services online, sometimes change can happen quickly, courtesy of a strategy known as dynamic pricing. Often shaped by algorithms that work behind the scenes, prices fluctuate to maximize the seller's profits. Dynamic pricing is nothing new, but the growth of online shopping and developments in artificial intelligence have made it far easier and far more common for companies to deploy it across a wide range of purchases, from groceries to clothing. Demand is a common driver of dynamic pricing changes. Prices may, for example, rise in anticipation of increased demand at certain times of the day or week, or when an item is selling quickly. Competitor pricing can have an effect too, with businesses tracking what rival retailers are charging and altering their prices to match or undercut them. In some cases, in a practice known as personalized pricing, factors such as customers' location or browser history may influence the prices they see. So where does this happen? Airlines have long used dynamic pricing. Algorithms compare real-time sales to forecasts. If some seats are selling more slowly than expected, prices may drop. Likewise, if sales are beating expectations, prices rise, and seats are commonly grouped into fare buckets, meaning that a certain number of tickets are allotted to be sold at a certain fare, and when the cheapest bucket sells out, the price jumps. Airlines may sell 200 seats at 200 different prices, depending on when and how travelers book them, says Scott Keys, founder of Going, an app for flight deal alerts. Hotels and rideshare apps such as Uber and Lyft use dynamic pricing as well. A local event such as a conference, concert, or weather disruption can boost the demand for hotel rooms and raise prices as much as 40% or 50%. During rush hour, bad weather, or major events, rideshare apps may double or triple their fares. Ticket prices for concerts, sports matches, and other events might also fluctuate depending on the demand, especially via third parties such as Ticketmaster. Increasingly, food delivery platforms are making use of dynamic or personalized pricing tactics. In December, Consumer Reports published an investigation showing Instacart ran an AI-driven price experiment that could show users different prices from the same grocery store items at the same stores at the same time, with variations as high as about 23% on some products. After the report was released, lawmakers and consumer advocates called for investigations, and within weeks, Instacart announced it would end the price tests. Since many delivery platforms continue to allow surge pricing during times of peak demand, major online retailers deploy algorithms to optimize profitability too. Any major national brand will likely engage in some form of dynamic pricing these days, says money-saving expert Andrea Warrich. As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That number again being 716-821-5555. Maria C. Abarno, Marcia Bedigol, Diane K. Brewer, Nee Epler, Charles Butler, Jane M. Cacciato ni Marinaccio, Nancy Lynn Caldwell, Suzanne A. Carroll ni Makarsky, Mary Jane Chadwick, Charles Camira, Donald C. Craiglow, Laura Evers, Mary Jane Fallon ni Bade, Angeline M. Angie Ferrantino, Pearl M. Glick ni Applebacher, John T. Jim Golenbach, Patricia Gray ni Lambert, Risa B. Gregory ni Goldberger, Gertrude J. Guth ni Helmbrecht, John Andrew Denis Hamilton, Patricia E. Hauser ni Morin, Clinton Gale Hodge, Phyllis A. Horton, Dare Brian Irwin, Gregory James Jones II, Dr. Linda Cam, Rosemary H. Casca ni Kane, Russell G. Knox, Edith V. Corner ni Madeira, Donald J. Comenda, Alice H. Cott, Benita Louise Krull ni Nesbitt, Donna L. Lucille, Jenna Leschner, Mary Leonard Holleran, James Ludwig, Kenneth Malark, Reverend Monsignor Salvatore Manganiello, Deacon Harry Edgar Jr., Manuel Jr. Dickey, Robert F. McCoy, Susan J. Melber, Joseph R. Metros, James A. Mees, Isabel E. Murphy, Joyce E. Palzinski ni Zhukutzwitz, Donald Charles Pello, Edward C. Petrie, Ronald Fillins, Salvatore J. Russo, Eva Schoen ni Nana, Kurt Seeley, Irene E. Smith, Blanche M. Stewart ni Newcomb, Charles M. Sullivan, Janet Jean Sullivan ni Collins, Marianne Tarquini, Paul A. Tatarsky, Sean M. Vago, Felix Raymond F. Warner Jr., Ruth Weissman Spivak, Nancy Wollstonecraft, Betty Yee Benzel, Michael T. Zawodowski. If you need further information on any of these names, call us again at 716-821-5555. That number again being 716-821-5555. And now on to Royal Stars with Georgia Nichols. Happy birthday for Sunday, March 15th, 2026. You're independent, bold, and decisive. You're fearless, charismatic leader. This is the beginning of a new 9-year cycle for you. Expect new changes, adventures, and major changes, and new beginnings. Be ready to take action, define your goals, and what you do now will bring great benefit to the future. The stars show the kind of day you'll have, with 9 being dynamic, 4 is positive, 3 is average, 2 is so-so, and 1 is difficult. For Aries, you're having a 4-star day. This is a fantastic day for you to do research of any kind or look for answers or solve problems because your mind is like a little machine. Tonight, goal setting. For Taurus, you're having a 3-star day. People are impressed with you today because you appear to be charming and cooperative. Meanwhile, you might take charge of a meeting or a group of people. Tonight, you're admired. For Gemini, it's a 4-star day. Discussions with bosses, parents, teachers, VIPs, and the police will be lively and emphatic today. You will not hesitate to state your case. Tonight, explore. For Cancer, controversial subjects like politics and religion and racial issues will excite you to state your ideas with conviction and passion. Tonight, check your finances. For Leo, it's a 4-star day. This is an excellent day if you have to defend yourself over disputes about shared property, taxes, debt, or any other financial arrangements. Tonight, cooperate. For Virgo, it's a 3-star day. Tread carefully when talking to spouses, partners, and close friends. Today, because you might be coming on a bit strong. Tonight, work. For Libra, today you'll be able to do intellectual mental tasks and do them for much longer than usual. However, you might also find yourself feeling defensive about something. Tonight, socialize. For Scorpio, a 3-star day. If you're involved in sports, the arts, or playful activities with children, you will be decisive and project yourself with energy. Your domestic world is comforting. Tonight, relax. For Sagittarius, a 4-star day. Go gently with family discussions today because you're firm about what you want and you intend to get results, which could ruffle some feathers. Tonight, discussions. For Capricorn, a 3-star day. You have tremendous intellectual energy today, which is why you can work with mental problems or challenges for a long time. Tonight, maintain your belongings. For Aquarius, it's a 4-star day. You want to clear up any fuzzy thinking about your earnings or your personal wealth. Fortunately, your ability to do this will require tact and charm, which you have today. Tonight, you're strong. For Pisces, it's a 3-star day. You're full of energy and drive, which is why you might take over a situation or quickly explain things to others. It's a strong day for those of you who teach or sell. Tonight, solitude. And now for Today in History. On this date, March 15th, in 44 BC, on the Ides of March, Roman dictator Julius Caesar was assassinated by Roman senators including Brutus and Cassius. In 1965, President Lyndon B. Johnson, addressing a joint session of Congress, called for federal legislation to guarantee every American's right to vote. The result was the passage of the Voting Rights Act in 1965. In 1972, The Godfather, the Francis Ford Coppola film, based on the Mario Puzo novel and starring Marlon Brando and Al Pacino, premiered in New York. In 2012, convicted former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich entered a federal prison in Colorado, where the 55-year-old Democrat began serving a 14-year sentence for corruption. He was released in February 2020 after President Donald Trump commuted his sentence. Trump pardoned Blagojevich in February 2025. In 2018, a pedestrian bridge under construction over a busy Miami highway crashed, crushing vehicles. 6 people were killed and 10 were injured. And in 2019, a gunman killed 51 people at 2 mosques in Christchurch, New Zealand, while live streaming the massacre. Brenton Tarrant was sentenced to life in prison without parole after pleading guilty to 51 counts of murder and other charges. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service for March 15th, 2026. We'll return for more readings after this short break. Your reader for this first hour has been Edwin J. Vieira, and for the second hour, your reader will be Ron Bickelman. Stay tuned, but thanks for listening.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your reader is Ron Bickelman. Ex-Parma rep gets probation in lucrative scheme. A year ago, a plea hearing for Michael Luerzen, the judge offered calming words on what he presumed would be a nerve-wracking court appearance for the former pharmaceutical rep to admit perjury. "I'm not nervous," Luerzen matter-of-factly replied to the U.S. District Judge Lawrence Villardo. Luerzen, 42, did not seem nervous at his sentence hearing Friday either, when the judge sentenced him to 3 years of probation. While a perjury conviction carries a maximum prison sentence of 5 years, and the advisory sentencing guides in Luerzen's case called for 8 to 14 months in prison, his plea agreement included a provision in which the government said he should not go to prison. That marked quite a reversal from the government's stance when Luerzen first stepped into the courtroom at his arraignment 4.5 years ago, indicted on conspiracy to commit healthcare fraud and 21 other charges. At his trial 4 years ago, the federal prosecutor called the former Clarence resident architect of a Brazilian healthcare fraud that generated more than $10 million in wrongful insurance reimbursements to him and others for custom-made medical creams that included highly priced ingredients. The exorbitant reimbursements from insurers, sometimes as much as $16,000 or more for each tube of compound medical cream, allowed him to live in the waterfront condos in Miami and Buffalo and drive a Lamborghini, prosecutors said. Luerzen's sentence involved only the perjury conviction, not the healthcare fraud. But the judge addressed all those tubes of medical cream that raked in reimbursements. "You might have thought what you did was legal, but you couldn't have thought it was right," Villardo told him. The government's initial case against Luerzen centered on custom medications, also called compounds. These are not medications made by pharmaceutical companies that doctors typically prescribe for patients and then are picked up by patients at their local drugstore. Some patients can't use major commercially available drugs because of an ingredient to which they may be allergic. So a compound is a custom medication made by a pharmacist without an ingredient which a patient may be allergic and with a different ingredient used. Luerzen identified insurance plans such as those offered by Verizon and National Grid that would pay for compounds made for the most expensive ingredients. And then those involved in the scheme found unwitting utility employees as patients. Prosecutors said Luerzen made sure the custom medications he was marketing included some very expensive ingredients, whether they were needed for a particular patient or not, the prosecution said. A court filing from prosecutors said Luerzen launched the scheme by obtaining fraudulent prescriptions for himself. He obtained more than 20 prescriptions from 2 doctors between April and September 2014. The total reimbursement for 6 months' worth of same-day different doctor prescriptions exceeded $186,000. And Amherst Williams recounted to jurors at Luerzen's trial that so many refills of the medical creams came to her home that she started throwing them in the trash. She didn't know at the time that her husband's insurance company was billed thousands of dollars for a single tube. Her husband's insurance plan paid more than $2.8 million for the compound medications. Several others with similar prescriptions also racked up huge bills for their insurers, with a tube of medical cream billed at an average cost of $14,000, but some billed upward of $27,000. Prosecutors, however, failed to convict Luerzen of anything at his 2022 trial. Jurors acquitted him on money laundering and evidence tampering charges, and Villardo declared a mistrial on healthcare fraud and other counts of which the jurors deadlocked. His trial lawyers relied on 2 themes when urging jurors to acquit him. First, the health insurance companies decided that they were willing to pay for different compound medications, and they were perfectly free at any time to stop covering the compound medications or paying higher reimbursements. Second, it was the other pharmacy reps that Luerzen enlisted to work under him who later became government witnesses who did the wrongdoing, they said. At the trial, the grand jury issued a superseding indictment that added the 3 perjury charges and 3 money laundering counts on top of the healthcare fraud charge and other unresolved charges. But the U.S. Attorney's Office eventually decided not to retry the case and instead reached an agreement in which Lurzen admitted a perjury count for giving false testimony during his 2022 trial. Lurzen's plea agreement with the government did not minimize the seriousness of his conduct, Assistant U.S. Attorney General Charles Crowley said on Friday. Lurzen said that he had every right to fight the criminal charges in court, Crowley said, but he has no right to lie, and that's what he did in this case, he said. The government took into account the number of factors deciding to enter into the plea agreement, after which Crowley called a lengthy and complex trial in which jurors could not reach agreement on many underlying charges. The plea agreement requires Lurzen to pay $2 million in restitution. The Department of Justice has given a preliminary indication that restitution would be covered by the liquid assets the government seized from him 6 years ago. The plea agreement, while ruling out prison, kept probation, home detention, and the fine and sentencing options. Defense attorney Joseph Makowski said Lurzen had turned his life around since relocating to Miami and becoming a father. Makowski asked the judge not to impose probation, but simply to end the case and let Lurzen get on with his life unencumbered. The federal investigation began in 2016, and Lurzen had endured trying time over the past decade, which is proceeded in court. Makowski said, "I take full responsibility for my actions that took me into this situation," Lurzen told the judge. Makowski described Lurzen as a good salesman and a smart, hardworking entrepreneur. It grew too fast, and he didn't have a process in place to run a business like this, and he got out of control, Makowski said. In a court filing, Makowski said Lurzen did not write the rules of pharmaceutical sales. He did not produce, prescribe, or price the compound medications that became involved with selling. Each of those decisions were by others wholly outside of his control. No one was physically harmed through Lurzen's conduct and stand on the sale of prescribed compound medications. Lurzen's trial lawyers told jurors most of the misconduct the prosecutors talked about in the trial was done by those working under him. The perjury conviction resulted from something Lurzen did know but lied about. Where he was July 11, 2014, he testified at his trial. He was in Boston, Massachusetts on that date, saying he had photos on his phone to prove it. But telephone and financial records show he was in Buffalo on that July day. What he said mattered in the trial because it was on July 11th that an altered compound prescription form was faxed from his father's local residence, according to the plea agreement. Whatever the merits of the underlying case, the defendant could not have license to lie blatantly and so repeatedly, clearly told the court filing. The only apparent explanation for the defendant's willingness to lie freely is a sense of entitlement that he came away with because he's a likable person and that lying to a jury and 2 federal judges is not a particularly serious offense, he said. U.S. Croker, USS Sullivan's imperiled by leaks at Naval Park. A multi-agency response led by the Department of Environmental Conservation is underway to address environmental cleanup and vessel stabilization needs aboard the USS Croker and the USS Sullivans at the Buffalo and Erie County Military Naval Park. A recent inspection at the Naval Park found the U.S. Croker is leaking petroleum from a pinhole of one of its fuel tanks into the Buffalo River. A joint effort now is underway to clean up the environmental concerns, according to the park, the DEC, and the Coast Guard. In addition to the intermittent leak, the inspection showed the water is getting into the USS Sullivans. To create a separate, potentially hazardous threat to the environment, DEC Commissioner Amanda Lefton said during a virtual news conference, to be clear, there are no reports of injury or other impacts to the local wildlife at this time. Both vessels are permanently moored. The response will focus on safe removal and treatment of the leftover fuel, along with stabilization measures meant to keep contaminated water from accumulating. DEC is committed to protecting the Buffalo River and coordinating closely with the Coast Guard, City of Buffalo, and the Naval Park to ensure effectively and safe response at these historically significant vessels, Lefton said. U.S. Croker holds 25,000 gallons of diesel fuel and 115,000 gallons of oily water. while the USS Sullivan has 30,000 gallons of oily water. Cleanup plans include pumping oil and water, offloading oily water, and transporting the vessels to Erie, PA for dry dock repairs. The Coast Guard and Naval Park are collaborating. Updates will be provided as milestones are reached, they said. DEC will be utilizing our extensive expertise and will spill response with our partners to address the incidents at the Buffalo River and protect environmental resources, Lefton said. Once the oil water are offloaded, she said, the stern will rise about 4 feet, then perforations in the hull will float above the water line, and the vessel will be transported via Lake Erie to the dry dock for repair. Dry dock for repairs has been planned for some time. The Naval Park had planned to be open the season Saturday, but the opening has been postponed. Work begins Monday. U.S. Coast Guard Commander Adam Mosley, the incident commander, commended the Navy's response. They have been looking forward to leaning with measures to protect not only the environment, but protect the National Historic Landmarks that they oversee. We appreciate their forthright response. As Allentown evolves, Plant Shop fills a beloved spot. Too many Buffalonians know of sorrow, losing a favorite retailer. These days, we're seeing entire shopping malls getting tossed into the brick-and-mortar boneyard, not to mention the routine closures of tiny, though beloved neighborhood businesses. But I always held out hope for Allen Street Dress Shop, within walking distance of my house for 25 years. I have clothes I bought at the dress shop decades ago for the weddings of people whose kids have since grown and left home. Those dresses are still hanging in my closet, ready to wear again. Now I travel to East Aurora to shop at the dress shop. Owner Danielle Webb closed her Allentown location in June after 38 years on the street, deciding it was time to consolidate at her original spot. People insist that change is good, but it's hard to think that change by conflagration can be positive. We'll have to wait and see what arises from the empty old Pink and Mulligan's Brick Bar locations, but sometimes storefronts can change hands in a good way. At first, I didn't think about the dress shop. In fact, I struggled against resentment, and I'm beginning to come around. It didn't take much, just a garden-related business with a catchy name. It helped that it was gardening. Route 716 moved into the former dress shop space at 89 Allen Street 6 months ago. It's a sophisticated concept that's finding popularity across the country. Plants plus home decor, mainly vintage. I first encountered this botanical man-made amalgam a couple years ago in Sumner, Washington, at a Van Leeuwenhoek garden market, which prides itself on found objects and great plant picks. Then last year in Tennessee, I visited Millstone Market Nursery, which, in addition to plants, has offered furniture and accessories, vintage and otherwise, to fully decorate a house. Route 716 owner Tim Vogel is in it for the long run. I'm really not making money here, he says, but this is only my third year. Vogel's take on it is it takes a minimum of 3 years to start making a profit. I wouldn't know. It seems amazing that anyone would venture into storefront entrepreneurship at this time, but people do. And the success stories at least compete with closures, especially interestingly enough, when plants are involved. But plus, put a plant on it open on Elmwood Avenue more than 5 years ago, and the owner, Joanna Dominguez, puts it, the shop, exotic rescue birds, can be seen amid the jungle of healthy foliages thriving and vibing. Also, a 2019 edition, the Plant Shack, set up locations in East Aurora and Lewiston, and the Lewiston shop is independently owned. Those aren't the only newly plant shops, not even close, but it's more than enough for someone who remembers the days when you depended on traditional nurseries and garden centers to have a selection of houseplants on hand. At Route 716, Vogel estimates he has roughly 70 to 30 mix of vintage furniture and accessories to houseplants. Vogel also has his own landscaping business, which is still what pays the bills, and he propagates most of his plants he sells through Cuttings Ends division. He also makes pottery as well as paintings, but says a lot. Vogel says, I wanted to have more than plants. I want to give people an idea how to style their homes. You know, how things look nice, and the right thing is put in the right place, just as with landscaping. Before Allen Street, Vogel's shop was around the corner on Franklin Street for a couple of years, but just as can happen with plants, the spot wasn't quite right. Dress shop owner Webb told him about her storefront opening, and he was ecstatic. Vogel, not the only one offering a larger selection of man-made items than is common with plant shops. Daddy's Plants hosts the Niagara Street Vintage Collective, which leans more toward an eclectic selection of small household items. Lots of glassware, wearables. The collection includes Compost This, the Rust Belt Threads, and Wise Ample Vintage. Focusing on vintage is a way to avoid tariffs that have spared the horticultural industry. Roughly 97% of U.S. importers are small businesses. Even American wholesalers are selling pots and accessories to plant shops should be importing from China. And they pass those extra costs along. By keeping these plants homegrown and other merchandise secondhand, Vogel can avoid the headache nobody in his margin needs. It's not possible for everybody. Bigger gardening operations have long relied on seed, starting supplies, fertilizer, and other horticulture needs from China, which have off and on been tariffed. As if Allentown business needed tariffs to make things harder. I don't know how they do it, but when I first walked into the doors of Route 716 last week, I felt hopeful and inspired. Allen Street needs some inspiration right now. You're listening to a reading of articles and features of today's Buffalo News on Niagara Radio Reading Service. The time is 16 minutes after the hour. Presidential ally Grinnell exiting as Kennedy Center leader. Richard Grinnell, an ally of President Trump, who oversaw far-reaching changes at the Kennedy Center that prompted many artists to abandon their iconic performing arts venue, will step down as the institution's president. Trump announced a change in social media on Friday after it was first reported on Axios. The president said Max Filoka, who manages the Kennedy Center facility operations, will succeed Grinnell. The move are expected to be finalized at a board meeting scheduled for Monday at the White House, according to a person familiar with the matter who requested anonymity to discuss plans that are not yet made public. Grinnell's departure comes as the Kennedy Center prepares to close for the summer for a 2-year renovation. Grinnell was a central player in the Trump's push to dramatically overhaul the Kennedy Center following the president's return to office. After mostly ignoring the center during his first term, Trump made it a focal point in his first war against the woke culture. He ousted the Kennedy Center's previous leadership, replaced it with the first handpicked board of trustees, and voted to rename the facility Trump Kennedy Center, a change scholars and lawmakers say must be initiated by Congress. More recently, Trump's name was physically added to the building's facade. The fallout from the arts community was swift and intense, with prominent musicals such as Hamilton canceling performances. Actor Isha Rae and author Louise Penny also withdrew from appearances, while consultants such as Ben Folds and Renee Fleming resigned. Last week, Executive Director of the National Symphony Orchestra, Gene Davidson, left to head the Los Angeles-based Wallace Annenberg Center for Performing Arts. Perhaps best known for its annual honors program, the Kennedy Center was long one of the few places in Washington where political differences were put aside. But the venue became something of an extension of Trump's White House during his second term. The president was instrumental in convincing FIFA president Gianni Infantino to hold the World Cup draw there in December. Just a few days later, Trump hosted the Kennedy Center Honors, the first for a president. Grinnell was a longtime Republican foreign policy advisor during Trump's first term. He was the U.S. ambassador to Germany and special presidential envoy to Serbia and Kosovo peace negotiations. He also served as acting director of national intelligence and was considered a contender for Secretary of State in Trump's second term. For his position at the Kennedy Center, Grinnell emphasized what he called common sense programming, aiming to steer the venue toward events that appealed to a broad audience and didn't lose money. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island, the top Democrat on the Environment and Public Works Committee, released documents in November showing the Kennedy Center entered the agreement giving FIFA exclusive use of the facility from November 24th through December 12th at no cost, arguing that the venue was at risk of losing millions in potential revenue because of the arrangement. The Kennedy Center told the AP at the time that it was being paid $7.4 million to host the draw, including $2.4 million donation from FIFA, as well as sponsorship opportunities and expenses. In response to the White House, Grinnell said he had raised $117 million last year, but the wave of cancellations proved difficult. Without mentioning abandoning performance, Trump said in February he would close the Kennedy Center for 2 years after the summer's July 4th celebrations to repair what he described as a dilapidated building. Sully's bright future is a nod to the telethon's impact. Local news. Claire Sellers sometimes becomes overwhelmed when she thinks about the role that Golisano Children's Hospital has played in the amazing journey of her 10-year-old son, Sully Matile. The boy, who was born 6 weeks prematurely in 2015, has overcome dozens of health challenges in his short life. But today he's a bright, happy, accomplished student, athlete in the Buffalo public school system. At one point, Sully was going to 10 to 15 medical appointments a month, not including various therapy sessions. During COVID, his immune system broke down. He was so weak he couldn't walk. Now he's on a basketball team, a lacrosse team. He skis. He plays violin, and he's in the gifted and talented program at school. He does everything. The energetic son of Sellers and husband Mike Matile also enjoys building complicated Lego projects and practicing Taekwondo, playing Minecraft, and rooting for the Buffalo Bills and Bandits. A fourth grader at the Arthur O'Eve School, Sully has a twin sister, Mary, and an older sister, Lizzie. Diagnosed with autism, aphasia, and ADHD, Sully is a celebrity child who will be featured on the Variety Club's 64th Annual Kids Telethon. The fundraiser will be broadcast live March 21st to 22nd. Organizers say the telethon has raised more than $43 million for the hospital and other charities that benefit local kids since the first broadcast in 1962. It's believed to be the largest continually running local telethon in America, said Katie Kaminsky and Susan Grelick, co-chairpersons of the event. Sully's parents said they realized that their son is one of countless children whose lives have been saved, greatly improved by many services offered by the hospital. Will Holton, 46, a Buffalo saxophone player, songwriter, and recording artist, said he's one of those people. He's one of those entertainers who will perform at this year's telethon. Holton credits Jesus Christ, the prayers of my parents, and Children's Hospital for helping him survive after he was born in 1980 with 3 holes in his heart. At 3 months of age, he was diagnosed with spinal meningitis. Every time I pick up my saxophone, I remember what was done for me. It makes me want to bring joy to others with my music. We are blessed, truly blessed to have this hospital in our community. 15-hour live event described by its producers as Live Chaos. The telethon will originate from Variety Club headquarters on Broadway in Lancaster. It will air on March 21st on WGRZ TV Channel 2 from 6 p.m. until 11 p.m. The broadcast will resume from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday on WBBZ TV Channel 5. Sunday's event will also be streamed live on the Variety Club Facebook page. WUFO Radio 1080 AM and Power 96.5 FM will simulcast the show from 6 until 8 p.m. Sunday. Many telethon hosts will include several personalities from Channel 2, Bishop Darius Pridgeon from True Bethel Baptist Church, Buffalo attorney Paul Cambria, Bills linebacker Buffalo Joe Andreessen, and Bills Hall of Fame member Darryl Talley, and Ted Shred and Tom Reagan from 97 Rock Radio. In addition to Holton, wide range of musical performance will include Sydney Sterlace of the Voice, the TV show Soul Turn, Hit and Run, Tailor Made Jazz, Ramblin' Lou Reed Band, Captain Tom and Hooligans Polka Band, and the youth choruses from local churches and schools. About 500 volunteers take part in the telethon every year, said Rich Goldstein, executive director of the annual Kids Day. A newspaper sale sponsored by the Buffalo News also supports the Variety Club and the hospital. According to hospital officials, donations help the hospital to provide a wide range of services, to purchase state-of-the-art medical equipment, and also keep doctors, nurses, and other personnel in Buffalo. Now let's look at the columnist asking Eric. Mother refuses to accept facts of cancer diagnosis prognosis. Dear Eric, my 87-year-old mother has pancreatic cancer. My husband and I moved out of state to live with her for 4 months while she went through radiation and through enough of recovery to live independently. Her cancer is back after about a 6-month reprieve. Doctors have said she cannot have more treatments due to health and age. She refuses palliative care and hospice. She has difficulty walking, severe brain fog, and fatigue. Has trouble remembering things. She's also medically anorexic due to nausea, probably from the cancer's return. She blames all of her symptoms on radiation and insists she will get stronger once the effects of the radiation wear off. She still drives, although the doctors have recommended that she doesn't drive. She always has been socially active and fiercely independent. She and I have complicated history. She refuses to face what is likely to be the end of her life, causes me great stress. I want her, as well as others around her, to be safe and comfortable. However, I have no idea how to interact with her and to have the discussions that we need to have. When I have broached conversations about having help and ideas about make her life a little easier, it usually ends up with me acquiescing to what she wants, and both of us are feeling the strain. I've tried reaching out to her oncology team, and they have done an exceptional job of trying to give my mom a reality check, but she denies their facts. At this point, I will not live with her again unless it's an end-of-life situation, and I'm quite willing to help her sort out the home health care and or rides to and from places she needs to go, which she also refuses. I feel like I'm in a no-win position. Concerned daughter. Dear daughter, I'm sorry about your mother's prognosis, and I'm sorry that you're both stuck in a difficult position. She's in the midst of something that's painfully human. Struggling to accept reality. Unfortunately, we can't make others accept what they want to or can't accept. What they won't, can't accept. We can impose the strictures of reality on them, but sometimes the best thing to do is to detach with love. That sounds like what you're doing. You're not abandoning her, you're simply resigning from the debate. This is part of the healthy boundary setting. You can't argue your mother into accepting the truth or having an easier life, so it makes sense for you to avoid situations where you're drawn into debate. This also frees you up emotionally to show up when she really needs help. Sometimes we have to let our loved ones make choices we don't agree with, and we don't have to co-sign on those choices. Dear Eric, I have several siblings. Our mom always showed blatant, unapologetic favoritism toward her eldest and youngest children, but for no apparent reason. My mom passed away recently. She left a sizable estate to her 2 favorite children and number 1 son's 2 children. She didn't leave anything to me, my children, or anything to the other sibling. The favored sibling grandchildren inherit many millions of dollars each. The lifetime of favoritism put significant strain on sibling relationships growing up. It's hard to watch the favored siblings, and especially their children, enjoy secure futures and lives of ease and luxury. I asked the favored siblings and the 2 grown favored grandchildren if they would share my grandfather's treasure. My mother inherited her estate from her father. The 4 favored family members declined to share. With absolute straight faces, they claim it would be disloyal to our mother to give money to people she chose not to give money to. I became pretty resigned to my mother's favoritism growing up, but I cannot get past my resentment of her treatment of my kids. I miss my siblings, but I don't know how to overcome this divisiveness she embraced. Do you have any advice? Left out. Dear Left Out, this is such a cruel behavior. I'm sorry. The poisoned fruit, when left to rot, sets down poison roots and grows new poison trees. That's what's happening here. Her true bequest, it seems, was this divisiveness, but you don't have to accept it because your siblings have chosen to embrace the divisiveness and greed. These may not be relationships that serve you anymore. There may be a part of you that suspects if you show enough an effort of acquiescing to the right conditions, they'll treat you the way you deserve to be treated. This is probably not the case if you can't say to yourself, these people can't or won't show love to me in the way that I want to be shown love. It may free you. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. Now let's look at sports. New Sabre Luke Schenn, Tanner Pearson bring experience, versatility to playoff pursuit. Give Luke Schenn credit for not just for age, but for perspective experience. Those come with his long life in the NHL. Buffalo acquired the defenseman from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan in a trade March 6th with Winnipeg Jets. And he displaced Jason Zucker as the oldest player on the Sabres roster. Schenn is 36, a little more than 2 years older than Zucker, who turned 34 in January. Schenn is an 18-year NHL veteran who has played in 1,119 games with 9 NHL teams and helped Tampa Bay Lightning win the Stanley Cup in 2020 and 2021. Schenn joins the Sabres, who pursue their first playoff berth since the 2010-11 season. He was his third NHL season with Toronto Maple Leafs that year. Fast forward nearly 15 years, Schenn was on defense with Winnipeg when it lost 5-1 December 1st at the KeyBank Center. Something about the Sabres stuck with him. I remember walking out of that game and saying, there's no way that team should be in the position they're in right now. Schenn said, they're too good, they're too skilled, they're too fast. They got size, all the pieces you need to figure it out. Good for them for getting it on the right track. Now Schenn and Tanner Pearson, acquired by the Sabres in a separate deal with the Jets, are on the playoff track with their new teammates. There are also players who, with combined 31 NHL seasons, have continued to evolve as their careers have progressed. To play in this league for a while, you have to evolve, and I think I've done a good job of that, Pearson said. Play my game and not get too fancy, but responsible, and I think teams seem to like that. Here's a closer look at Schenn and Pearson and what they bring to the Sabres. Experience matters. The experience factor certainly works in Schenn's favor, not just in what he's done and whom he's played with in 18 seasons, but how he's evolved, a key in NHL longevity. There's a ton more speed and skill, Schenn said. I've been down and out before in this league, and everyone kind of asks questions and talks like you've got to reinvent yourself to keep going. Sometimes you just look around the room and try to fill a different void. And maybe the team doesn't have at times, trying to figure out ways to bring value to the team. I'm very grateful to keep going. Schenn doesn't think his game has drastically changed since he first played in the NHL in October 2008 with the Toronto Maple Leafs. At 6'2", he's physical, he can hit. He's also benefited from minutes management in the vein of less can mean more. He averages 13 minutes, 45 seconds of ice time in 47 games this season, down from 15:57 last season. Schenn's longevity also leads to the experience factor. In his first season in the NHL, he played with Pittsburgh's Sidney Crosby, Washington's Alex Ovechkin, who, like Schenn, remained productive in their 30s. Now Schenn is facing a new generation of players, including Chicago's Connor Bedard and San Jose's Macklin Celebrini. One more thing Schenn brings, the experience of winning and knowing what it's like to play games in April, May, and June. I was there for the right 2 years in Tampa for sure, said Son, who appeared in 58 playoff games. Fortunate enough to get that opportunity to have my name on the cup. Experience is one thing to have to go through it. Right now, I'm trying to figure out myself and introduce myself to the boys here before you kind of start putting your impression too much on the room. Versatility matters. Pearson, the left wing, brings versatility to the Sabres at forward. Not only at one of the 3 spots on a line, he can play anywhere among the team's 12 forwards and on any of its 4 lines. I don't think there's a forward position I haven't played, said Pearson, who's in his 13th NHL season. At the start or middle of my career, maybe more of a top 6 guy. Past couple of years, I've been a rover type. Pearson has 7 goals and 6 assists and was +7 in 52 games with Winnipeg this season. The 33-year-old has 157 goals and 168 assists and is +9 in 775 career games in 6 teams. He helped Los Angeles win the Stanley Cup in 2013-14 and said he spent time with the Kings in and said the time he spent with the Kings from 2012 to 2019, a team that he valued defense at the time, helped shape him into a strong defensive forward. That's kind of my bread and butter was back then, Pearson said. That's how I learned to come in. If and when the Sabres are in a playoff berth this season, it will be Pearson's 7th time in the playoffs. Prior to the NHL trade deadline, the Sabres had only one player with Stanley Cup championship on the roster, Bowen Byram, who helped Colorado win the Stanley Cup in 2022. Only a handful of players with postseason experience. I'm not too sure how many of the guys have playoff games, but experience is the biggest thing, said Pearson. Responsibility, play a simple, strong game. Why did the Bills take a chance on safety C.J. Gardner-Johnson? Upside. A hard-hitting playmaking safety who can line up in multiple spots on defense and owns a Super Bowl ring, agreed on the 4th day of free agency to join the Buffalo Bills on a 1-year contract. How did someone as accomplished as C.J. Gardner-Johnson receive just $6 million to become a candidate to form a safety tandem with Cole Bishop? Gardner-Johnson's exit from Philadelphia Eagles, with whom he had won a Super Bowl 2 years ago, is a succinct summary of why he's not going to fit on every team. Gardner-Johnson explained the situation last July while appearing on the Pivot podcast. Scared of a competitor, Gardner-Johnson replied when asked by the host if retired safety Ryan Clark, why the Eagles traded the veteran despite his significant impact during their championship season. As simple as that. You can't program a dog. Gardner-Johnson cited a play 9 months earlier when he got ejected from a game against the Washington Commanders because of a second unsportsmanlike penalty. Eagles coaches yelled at him on the sideline. Then Gardner-Johnson explained tensions continued following a scrum at practice between the offense and the defense. The Eagles had enough. Gardner-Johnson was traded to the Houston Texans, and it took just 3 regular season games for their head coach, DeMeco Ryans, to decide it was not going to work. I know what's best for our team, Ryan said afterwards. Why would the Bills have interest? Gardner-Johnson's a very talented player. He proved it following his exit from Houston with 51 tackles, 5 for a loss, 2 interceptions, and 3 sacks in 10 games for the Bears. His coach, Ben Johnson, gave Gardner-Johnson a game ball in Week 9 for a 9-tackle, 2-sack performance and a forced fumble. Twice in Philadelphia, he had 6 interceptions. His skill set is perfect for the defense Buffalo wants to run, with Joe Brady as coach and Jim Leonard as play caller. Receivers must brace for a big hit when they catch the ball over the middle, and Gardner-Johnson is in the secondary. Is there a risk in bringing Gardner-Johnson in Orchard Park? Of course. But you could say that about any free agent. The difference here is the Bills not investing big money or term. Gardner-Johnson, 28, is the type of player who can flourish in the right environment. Ball hawk ability, physicality, and the ability to toe the line. But I cross it, Gardner told reporters Friday during a video conference call. Over the course of my career, I've had a good tendency of towing the line and having my teammates be able to tow it for me. Really playing feisty and going out there and understanding that I play with that passion and that chip on my shoulder playing for the city. His arrival should be used as a pleasant surprise. The Bills don't usually take a risk with McDermott as coach. A locker room can be a delicate ecosystem. If one person does not fit, everything can be thrown off balance. Bills general manager and vice president of football operations, Brandon Beane, is trusting his coaching staff, most notably Leonard and defensive back coach Jay Valai, to help Gardner-Johnson harness his ferocious competitiveness that has admittedly irritated others in the past. In Chicago, Gardner-Johnson got penalties just 3 times in 565 snaps. He was not called for unsportsmanlike conduct, and he gave the Bears a chess piece that every modern defense needs. Dennis Allen, the defensive coordinator, used Gardner Johnson as a blitzer. He led all NFL safeties with 3 sacks and totaled a career-high 6 quarterback hits. The events over the past few years, including the Eagles defensive coordinator Vic Fangio saying he was fine with the team trading Gardner Johnson, led to a perception that he has trouble getting along with teammates and coaches. Gardner Johnson does not care. One of his former teammates, Bills assistant linebackers coach Craig Robertson, vouched for him. Brady was also with Gardner Johnson in New Orleans. Because I look at it like this. I don't throw shade. Locker rooms I've been in, we've won. The situation I got traded to, like, it's hard to get into something where you're not familiar. You have to gather that relationship while trying to get better. And the season comes quick. Once the moves are made, the draft picks come in, it's on. Though Gardner Johnson may not have fit in McDermott's defense, the one Leonard will install this offseason needed a versatile safety with outstanding vision. His aggressive nature can lead to mistakes while trying to stop from Pro Football Focus. Credited Gardner Johnson with 17.9% missed tackle rate in 2025, but he should help the Bills in their mission to allow fewer explosive plays. Bishop's breakthrough season, which included 85 tackles with 3 interceptions, showed being that Buffalo had the freedom this season to add a safety who can play in the box or single high defender. Gardner Johnson can do both. According to Pro Football Focus, Gardner Johnson played 269 snaps as a box safety in 2025. He also played 390 snaps as a corner and 86 snaps as a free safety. His career numbers: 2,197 slot snaps, 1,567 free safety snaps, 1,086 snaps in the box. Leonard can use Bishop near the box on one play, then move him on to free safety for the next. The idea is to be unpredictable and make the quarterback uncomfortable with the looks they'll see pre and post snap. There's a theme to this offseason. The Bills want aggressive defensive players who can make plays in both defensive spots on the field. D. Elford, their newest nickel cornerback, can also be on the perimeter in the slot. He also cross-trains as a safety to help make plays as the overhang defender in coverage. The team also signed veteran safety Geno Stone, who started 45 games for the Bengals and Ravens across the past 3 years. The signing didn't preclude the Bills from adding another safety in the draft either. Jordan Hancock is a 5th-round pick in 2025, is still on the roster and brings similar versatility. Continuing along in sports, in golf, Aberg aces Sawgrass with 63. Ludwig Aberg had a dream start and carried him to a 9-under 63 and a 2-shot lead Friday in the Players' Championship. Scotty Scheffler had a clutch finish, but only to avoid missing the cut. Aberg was 5 under through the opening 4 holes and motored his way around TPC Sawgrass with one amazing shot after another. He chipped in twice for birdie on number 4, 1 for eagle on par 5, 9th for the 29 to tie the front 9 record for the stadium course. Even on the 1 chip he muffed, he limited the damage by holding an 8-foot putt for bogey. The final birdie, the Swede made it look easy, gave him a 2-shot margin over Xander Schauffele, who hit 14 fairways on his round to 65. I think my mind is very good when it's simple, when things are very easy, and that's the way I've felt. I've been able to do it over the last couple of weeks, Aberg said. He was 12 under 132 at the TPC Sawgrass he occasionally calls home. though Aubrey has not played the stadium course this year until practice round Tuesday. He chose Ponte Vedra Beach as home after finishing at Texas Tech. The stress came late in the day with Scheffler, the world's number one, who has the longest current cut streak at the PGA Tour at 69. He missed 2 birdie chances and then had trouble on the rough on the 14th hole for a bogey. Then he missed a 30-inch par putt on the par 5 16th. That put him at 2 overs and still having to face on the green for the hardest hole at Sawgrass. Scheffler found land at the 17th for par, standing at the 18th. He was 14 shots out of the lead, and anything but a par or better would have sent him home for the tournament on the weekend for the first time since August of 2022. He drilled the 3-wood down the middle, hit his approach to 8 feet, and made the birdie for a 73. Also making the cut with a few nervous moments was Rory McIlroy, whose back is getting better by the day, but whose putting is ailing. McIlroy birdied the par 5 9th at the end of his 71 to make sure he'd be playing this weekend. He and Scheffler, number 1 and number 2 of the world, were 1 over 145. Scheffler's lone bogey came on a careless 3-foot bogey on the par 3 13th, his 4th hole of the day, when he missed a putt just over 2 feet. The rest of his round was rock solid, and the 2-time major champion is starting to build some momentum. He wasn't aware he hit every fairway until it was mentioned to him. Sawgrass allowed for that on a gorgeous day of sunshine, of light wind, and greens that were receptive, ideal for scoring on a course that provides low rounds for those who avoid big trouble. Cameron Young, who contended at the Arnold Palmer Invitational last week, had a 67 and was 3 shots behind. Young is a big talent who finally broke through at his first PGA Tour last summer. The Players has been a mystery to him, though. He's yet to finish in the top 50 the 3 times in 4 years that he made the cut. But he was dialed in on the course that he described as tricky. Justin Thomas followed his 79-79 return from back surgery at Bay Hill with a 68-68 at the Players. He was 8 under 136 along with Corey Connors. The highlight for Thomas was following a bad miss on the green, left on the green on the par 5 11th, the pin to the left, and hitting a perfect pitch and run into the cup for the eagle. Pretty sick chip, Thomas said. Not one I necessarily expect to get some up and down all the time, but I have pretty good belief in my short game, and when you're on the fairway, you have to be a lot more in control of the ball. Just trying to visualize it, see it hit my spot. Luckily, the hole got in the way. It was nice to steal one there. Now let's look at Jay Skursky, some letters to the editor, the Bills mailbag. Welcome to the Bills mailbag. Let's get right to your questions after the first few days of free agency. Drew asks, you consider DJ Moore a true number 1 receiver because he had 1,000 receiving yards in multiple seasons, or is he just number 1 in Buffalo by default? When does familiarity skew or get in the way of a team properly evaluating a player's ability? Would Brandon Ayuk have been a better option? Do you like the re-signing of Connor McGovern and the signing of Bradley Chubb? How many true number 1 receivers are there in the league? It depends on how you define. One way would be to say there are 32 of them because each team has a receiver who leads in catches, yards, and touchdown receptions. Another would be to admit that the number 1 receiver is somewhat ambiguous. There are no doubt number 1 receivers to be sure. Justin Jefferson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Jamar Chase immediately come to mind when thinking about who fits that description. Would T. Higgins, Chase's teammate with the Bengals, be a true number 1 receiver from another team? How about Cowboys with C.D. Lamb and George Pickens? Considering all of that, my answer is Moore is on paper Bills' number 1 receiver, probably falls a bit short of being a true number 1 receiver when compared to some of the others in the league. Your second question is an interesting one. It makes sense that the Bills would acquire Moore, given that head coach Joe Brady had receiver before in Carolina. He knows how Moore works. and what works for him. That's an advantage, but I understand that when you're getting when wondering what is familiarity, maybe something work when a team is evaluating a player. I'm not sure there's a way to accurately measure Ayuk. Ayuk feels like a big risk to me. Does he even want to continue playing football? Is he healthy? There are two important questions you need to be answered. I'm a big fan of getting McGovern back. The Bills' number one priority should always be to protect Josh Allen as much as possible. McGovern helps in that regard. Plus, he brought us pizza. Just kidding. About his factoring into my opinion, kind of. The move for Chubb is understandable. He comes with some injury concerns, but he fell into Bills at the right price, which is a factor that can't be ignored. He should be a good fit in the defense and in the locker room, so I like the signing too. Ed Holinsky asks, do you get a sense that teams, for the most part, might be a bit more careful and hesitant this year when doling out stupid money? Not exactly. According to NHL Research, teams committed to possibly spending $2.3 billion between noon and 8 p.m. Monday. The first day of contract negotiations were permitted when the agents and pending free agents, that's $1 billion with a B. Not all that money is guaranteed, of course, but it still shows that the spending level around the league, the two teams with the most to spend in free agency, the Raiders committed $281.5 million to free agents, and the Titans closed behind at $270 million. The Bills mostly set out the huge contracts, although they did make sizable commitments to their own center, Connor McGovern, former Dolphins edge rusher Bradley Chubb. The Bills were never going to be huge spenders based on the available cap space. First-round receivers have been based on the available cap space. Dave S. asked, the second-round pick seems very high for Chicago number 3 receiver. Meanwhile, if the Bills were 11 picks from Abuka, 6 from Jackson Smith-Njigba, and 5 from Brian Thomas Jr., drafting a receiver gives you 5 years of cost-controlled production. First-round receivers have been mostly a sure bet in the past few seasons, unlike pass rushers whom the Bills can't seem to find one as a game changer. Why on earth can't Brandon Beane move up and draft a young, cheap receiver and use free agency or trades to get surefire pass rusher? Jay, keep in mind that the Bills did get a 5th-round pick in addition to DJ Moore, but I understand your concern, the acquisition costs. Dave, as for trading up for a receiver, it's fair to second guess of Beane, especially because of the trade down for Keon Coleman is looking, let's say, not great at this time. Usually I'm in favor of trading down, adding more darts to throw at the board. Beane has shown in the first round he's not afraid to move up, but he has not done so for a receiver. The acquisition of Moore makes it unlikely in my mind that he's going to use a pick in that position this year in the first round either. But with more than a month to go until the draft, things can still change when it comes to the team's biggest needs. Now let's look at college basketball. Schmidt era ends in defeat. St. Bonaventure coach Mark Schmidt's 19-year tenure came to a close Friday in the Atlantic 10's quarterfinals. Schmidt's 13th seeded Bonnie, 17-17, nearly made a Cinderella run into the A10 semis, but 4th seeded Dayton, 22-10, managed to hold them off with a 68-63 win at the PPC Paints Arena in Pittsburgh. During the post-game news conference, Schmidt was asked to share advice he'd give to the next St. Bonaventure coach. It's a great place, said Schmidt, whose son Nick is on the coaching staff. Basketball is the fabric, it's the heartbeat. Expectations are high, but it's a good place and good people. You've got to make sure that you become part of the community. That's the best advice I got when I first got here. Rumors spread about Smith's departure days before he officially announced his retirement following a March 7th loss to Davidson at the Riley Center in the regular season finale. Bonner defeated number 12 LaSalle 99-80 in Wednesday's A10 first round, and then upset number 5 George Mason 63-57 on Thursday. Second round to extend a two-time A10 Coach of the Year's career. Schmidt is St. Bonaventure's all-time leader in wins. He will retire with 423 and 345 record, posting a 341 and 225 record at Bona after going 82 and 90 and sixth season with Robert Morris. Schmidt guided the program to the NCAA tournament appearances in 2011 and 12, 2017 and 18, and 2021, and NIT appearances in 2015 and 16, 2021 and 22, and 2024 and 25. Schmidt is 1-3 in NCAA tournament games and 3-3 in NIT contests. A-10 Coach of the Year in 2016 and 2021. Schmidt led Bonner to conference regular season titles in 2015 and 16 and 2020-21, and A-10 tournament championships in 2011 and 2012 and 2020 and 2021. I know a lot of people doubted us, but we pushed through, Simmons said. We blocked out the noise. We did what we had to do. I wish we could have won this game. And we just kept on going. But I'm so proud of everybody that put so much amount of effort into this group. Senior forward Frank Mitchell added 16 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 steals. He collected 6 steals in Thursday's win. The first time the Bonnies won 2 straight games since the conference play began. Mitchell, who transferred to Minnesota after beginning his career at Canisius, called his 1 year at Bonn a blessing. I love Schmidt to death, Mitchell said. All of my coaches, he's probably the closest one I've been to anyone. He's a father figure to me, and I'm happy I laid it all on the ground. And I hope he's proud of me, and I'm definitely going to call him every day and annoy him the same way. But yeah, I love him to death, and I wouldn't choose no other coach but Schmidt. Dayton's Javon Bennett led all scorers with 27 points. He made 6 of 10 three-pointers. Jordan Derrick went 10 for 12 at the free throw line and scored 15 points. Emmanuel Letang scored 11 points, 12 rebounds, and 2 blocks. What Schmidt has done at Bonaventure needs to be extremely applauded, Dayton coach Anthony Grant said at the USA Network broadcast. It was a great 9 years for me having to prepare to go against his teams because they always were prepared. They always were tough. Let's take a look at scores around the NHL on Friday. Los Angeles beat the Islanders 3-2, St. Louis 3, Edmonton 2 in overtime. Sunday's games, St. Louis at Winnipeg at 3 p.m., San Jose at Ottawa at 5 p.m., Anaheim at Montreal at 7 p.m., Toronto at Minnesota at 7:30, Florida at Seattle at 8 p.m., Nashville at Edmonton at 8 p.m. Monday's games, Boston at New Jersey, 7 p.m., Calgary at Detroit at 7 p.m., Los Angeles at the Rangers at 7 p.m., Utah at Dallas at 8 p.m., and Pittsburgh at Colorado at 9:30 p.m. In the NBA on Friday, Detroit 126, Memphis 110, Cleveland 138, Dallas 105, New York 101, Indiana 92, Toronto 122, Phoenix 115, Houston 107, New Orleans 105, Portland 124, Utah 114, Minnesota 127, Golden State 117, LA Clippers 119, Chicago 108. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for March 15th. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast it at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your reader today is Ron Bickelman. Thank you for listening.
Coming up next on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have a reading of Buffalo Magazine. Following that at noon is the Sunday Gusto. And at 1 o'clock is the Sunday front section of the New York Times. Stay with us for these readings and more. The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability